Hey, it's Lloyd with the Food Connector. I'm here today with Michael Kessler, founder and managing partner of Tamarack Partners. Tamarack's a sell-side merger and acquisition advisory firm. It serves small to mid-sized businesses in the food industry and other sectors. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining me today.
Lloyd, pleasure.
So, Michael, I think I told you, but I've really been looking forward to talking with you today, and here's why. I'm in the middle of doing some estate planning stuff, and while it's not mergers and acquisitions, here's what it taught me is I knew I really needed someone to advise me because I did not know what to do or how to do it. And I think many business owners are kind of in a similar situation when it comes to selling their business. They really know how to operate their business, but they have no idea where to start when it comes time to sell their business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Cool. So, Michael, tell me how you got into advising businesses regarding mergers and acquisitions and how long you've been doing it.
Well, I started my career in New York after graduate school and joined the old Smith Barney, which is an investment banking firm, which now has been owned 2 or 3 different times and has lost its identity. But nonetheless, broke ground in New York working for that firm. And investment banking is broken up into 4 different groups typically. One of those groups is corporate finance. And what we do in that group is help companies raise money or execute merger and acquisitions as an outsourced service. In 1991, I was invited to join a firm in Minneapolis, a small boutique investment banking firm where I joined and was responsible for merger and acquisition across several of its sectors at that time. In 2001, that had gone through its second sale. And at that point, I took a little bit of time off and started to think about what I would do with my professional time after that. And having done a lot of merger and acquisition, working for big companies and small companies, I thought I would hang out a shingle with a couple of partners and service the local geography, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and environs, primarily servicing them with merger and acquisition advisory services. So I've been doing that for family businesses, entrepreneurs. Now more broadly than Minnesota, we really do have a national scope for about the last 15, 16 years.
Nice. So I think for the Food Connector, many of our clients are in the food industry, they're food companies. And it seems like many food companies in the United States are entrepreneurial or multi-generational family businesses. But in some cases, family succession just doesn't work out or make sense. So what's your advice to owner operators beginning to consider selling their business?
Well, the most important thing I'd say, Lloyd, is keep running the business, because when you take the eye off the ball and focus on other things, that most valuable asset that most people own can go sideways. So most importantly, try to keep and make decisions that are best for the business. It's good to plan in advance. Everything is better if it's planned in advance. Selling a business is the same thing. A lot of companies, a lot of family businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs have grown a business to a place where they don't necessarily see a family member taking over the business. And nonetheless, they have built something valuable and they would like to be able to reap the benefits of their work in exchanging that asset, which is a fixed asset, a relatively illiquid asset, for the monies that they could then look to provide for their life going forward, or charitable contributions or estate planning for their children, whatever the case may be. And that's a process that really does require a lot of planning and care. I oftentimes tell individuals who are thinking about a business transition to plan the first steps 4 or 5 years in advance. Doesn't always happen that way, but with the luxury of time and thinking about when they would like to exit the business and when they would like to see that transition, earlier is much better than later. Oftentimes what we find, Lloyd, is an owner of a company is approached and they all kind of are taken back a little bit with that approach. They weren't necessarily thinking about it. But even if they haven't had the opportunity of planning, timing is everything oftentimes. So yes, it is best to plan in advance, but that doesn't preclude the opportunity of being able to realize the benefits of what you built in a transaction in the event that you're approached or the markets are particularly generous
Mhm.
to certain kinds of sellers.
Yeah, so even if it's not top of mind, kind of like my estate planning thing, right? It's not like, knock on wood, we're all good. But at the same time, I'm realizing, oh, I should be doing some planning here. And so to one of my first steps was to find somebody that I could partner up with, feel good that they were going to be my guide through the process. And that's also a great thing for a business owner at that point, even if it's not top of mind or, oh my God, we're doing this next year. We're talking 4 or 5 years, but still starting to find somebody to partner up with would be a good step.
And it does require a village in many ways. The number of and types of advisors that an entrepreneur can benefit from as they plan for something like this
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
multiple.
So actually, I don't know much about this, but I'm really eager to learn. What's the merger and acquisition process look like?
Well, it involves a variety of constituents. My role as M&A advisor is, generally speaking, with regard to the actual planning and execution of the sale, I'm the quarterback.
Okay.
In addition to that, the company and the owners of the company should certainly avail themselves of experts that are tax planners, certainly experts that are able to make sure that financial accounts are in order, their accountants, as well as most families have a business attorney, but those business attorneys oftentimes don't have merger and acquisition experience.
Right.
And all of those disciplines, tax, accounting, merger advisory, and obviously legal counsel, have a specialized expertise within those disciplines in and around the sale of a company. So assembling a team, not necessarily all at once or not in any particular order, but assembling a team that can give the sellers advice as to how to plan for that team and plan for that transaction and be prepared for it is essential. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a necessary group that has to be involved anyway. So we really encourage people to establish those relationships early on.
Okay.
The M&A process overall, Lloyd, it's a time-consuming process, but assuming there's been a degree of planning and the company is in a position to attract buyers, they've had good performance, their markets are healthy, they've got a good team in place. That process can take anywhere from 7 to 8 months, depending upon how well a seller's house is in order.
Okay.
That seller really has very good button down operational controls and financial controls and a good management team. They are able to hit the ground running. I would divide the process into 3 pieces. One is a preparation of marketing material, which is the material that would be important for a buyer to receive and assess whether
Right.
there's a strategic fit
Yeah.
and assess the value of the company. The second middle part of that process is whereby we actually go out and market the company to prospective buyers. We contact them, we solicit their interest, we obtain non-disclosure agreements, we distribute the confidential memorandum that is the body of work that allows them to see and decide on their interest in the company, and we solicit initial bids from the company. Then the last third is, once we have a good idea of who the owners want to partner with, want to sell their company to, then we negotiate what's called a letter of intent with those buyers. They select one, and the process begins a very deep due diligence on the part of the buyer on the seller. And at the same time, there's a contract drawn up that the legal representatives take primary responsibility for, but it is effectively the purchase agreement whereby the buyer and seller agree to exchange the ownership and the assets of the company. So overall, it's a lengthy process, an intense process. It's the kind of process that, again, you have to be well prepared for going back to that initial comment we both made. You can't take your eye off the business, because if the business falters in the midst of the process, it can be very detrimental.
I see. Okay, well, that sounds like great advice. So let's zoom out a little bit and let's talk about the current M&A environment. Like, the future of our economy seems a little unclear or maybe a little rocky. What does that mean for mergers and acquisitions?
Well, at Tamarack, we established a variety of different sectors that we wanted to service, industry sectors that we wanted to service. I failed to mention, and I should, that I've benefited from partnering with Barry friend
Uh-huh.
who is a seasoned veteran in the foods business
Yes.
and also a partner at a consulting firm called Pentellect Partners.
Uh-huh.
And Barry is a tremendous resource who has spent his entire career within food and food services. He and I partnered together within the food business. I also have other partners within other sectors. But to answer your question, there are some headwinds that many sectors are facing right now.
Okay.
Obvious, hangover from COVID, the supply chain issues,
Mm-hmm.
the employment market is very,
Mm-hmm.
very tight. People are one of the things they most oftentimes mention in the conversation is how difficult it is to find talent.
Right.
In addition to the fact that right now you're seeing inflation rear its head and the Fed Reserve is reacting to that. A lot of those are headwinds for a variety of different industries. What we've found within the food sector, we found it within the healthcare sector, is a degree of resilience by virtue of the products that they provide and the way in which those products are paid for. To go to the grocery store is still putting a squeeze on a lot of families, but at the same time, what we see within the bounce back in the food industry post-COVID is a lot of strength and a lot of resilience. So it does make a difference. The types of companies we work with, Lloyd, tend to be those that are anywhere from $20 million in revenue to $60 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
There's no definition around that. That just tends to be the kind of companies that we've been fortunate to work with. A lot of family companies fit that mold.
Yeah.
And those companies really are always attractive to buyers because they don't necessarily represent the $2, $3, $4 billion transactions, whereby the debt markets play such an important part in the way in which those companies are financed and acquired.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, the companies we're selling can be financed off the balance sheet of the buyer without any additional borrowing or any extension of their current facility.
Okay.
So it's a healthy market. It's obviously a market that's very driven by private equity, which has been a wonderful addition to M&A sellers because it's really created a lot of additional interest and demand for good companies.
Awesome. Hey, Michael, thanks for such a great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I know there's much more information needed to help someone if they should be considering selling their business. And just kind of personally, I think getting some guidance in something like this when it comes to getting the most for such an important asset, right? And so you really want to prepare for that. And I think there are times where a small decision like deciding to reach out for some advice can make a huge difference in where you end up. This has been super helpful. So I want to thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate the opportunity, Lloyd. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care,
All right.
Michael.